Hi, my name is Adam Mills, and I decided to do my safety project on Star Rehab, a outpatient physical therapy clinic. My main point of contact for Star was Joe Bongiovanni. He was the one in charge of the facility's policies and procedures. Joe holds a Master's of Healthcare Administration and is the Chief Operating Officer for Star Rehab. Along with Joe, I was able to talk with most of the staff, which was primarily physical therapists and physical therapist assistants. And the clinic owner, Sophia Bong, it was just a CEO. She had no credentialing relating to patient care. So what is Star Rehab? Well, first, Star Rehab stands for Strength Training and Recovery. Star is a outpatient physical therapy clinic, and they primarily work with neurological populations. They had quite a diverse population of needs with their patients. Some were quadriplegic, some were paraplegic. They had traumatic brain injuries, strokes. They had a variety of amputees from trauma, cancer, diabetes, any sort of vascular complications, and then a wide variety of orthopedics.
Let me introduce you to a unique approach to recovery.
The people here always want to go the extra mile, and when you show up and give it your all and someone just says you're done, it's not a good thing. But here, there's always something more you can work on, something more you can improve.
Strength Training and Recovery's team of physical therapists provide one-on-one care to each client during their treatment plan. Our program is offered in a spacious 225,000 square foot center full of amenities to add a variety and customization to your recovery experience. Our therapy team can maximize your recovery beyond what you ever expected.
Star has helped me to understand that how my spinal cord injury plays out into the world is my choice, that I'm not disabled and I get to choose independence. I get to choose what I want for myself and how hard I'm willing to fight for it. I've been fully supported as I navigate it all. Star has just been life-changing.
I personally invite you to join our team at Star Rehab. It's simply where you need to be.
Before discussing their safety policies, I'll review how I felt about Star's website. I found the website to be very misleading. The opening video didn't reflect entirely how the clinic is these days. There has been a significant remodeling since they've done this video. The floor plan of it's much larger. Things are moved around, different equipment's available. And what was also concerning to me is that none of the current staff therapists were in the video. Who you saw in the video was prior therapists who have been gone for some time now. And even one of the patients in the video was being treated by the director of the facility who has never held a therapy license. To continue on talking about their website, there's a tab that's called the facility tab, and that was incredibly misleading also. So Star Rehab is an individual clinic inside a larger facility, and the vast majority of the facility is the Ascension Genesis Health Club. It's a 5,000 square foot facility with pools, tennis courts, and so much more. And as you go through Star's website, it has almost 3/4 of their pictures of the athletic club and not the clinic. And it has a really large description talking about the facility, but when you read closer to it, there's one small paragraph that says it's the athletic club that you need a membership to. And then it goes on and on and on talking about the perks of the athletic club, failing to ever repeat that you need to have a membership for these, that it's not part of the clinic. And on top of that, the membership to belong to the athletic club and use their equipment in your rehab is very expensive. So something that was immediately a safety hazard was right at the front door when you came in this place. When you walked through the entire building, there was mechanical buttons, automatic doors, really accessible. And then when you got to the clinic, you were greeted by a double door which one side remained locked and the other side you had to pull open. And considering they see a lot of quadriplegics, a lot of amputees with balance problems, a lot of their patients even have grip issues where they can't grab door handles that well. And to see them struggle with this door was a little frustrating. And even those who had an aide or a caregiver with them, when they went to go through the door was pretty narrow. And I even saw a couple people clip their power chairs and their arms in their wheelchair when they came through it. It's definitely far from any ADA policies as far as the width of the doors and the accessibility of it. To continue on about safety and accessibility is still the reoccurring theme of doors. Once you're inside the clinic, it's a relatively open floor plan. There's a narrow bottleneck in the lobby where multiple patients in wheelchairs or walkers would have a hard time getting around. But that isn't the end of the world if people are patient. But one thing I noticed was they have one-way COVID traffic, and the exit to the door you physically cannot open. You have to have some staff member come buzz you out with a little scanner. And for one, you're relying on staff, and you could see sometimes when no staff was around, people had to come back through the entrance and cross through groups of people. So if you were concerned of COVID, then there was a lot of cross traffic for sharing any COVID concerns. And on top of that, if you're in a wheelchair or have a short walking tolerance or just any difficulty ambulating, you wouldn't be able to go out the exit. You'd have to try and scramble and find another door to leave if there was some incident where you had to flee the clinic. And then just to double down on the doors again, the bathroom doors didn't have any accessible options too. There was no automatic door opening, and the doors were heavy. You would see patients in wheelchairs, people with walkers go up to it, and they would throw the door open and try to scurry in there before it closed on them. But frequently, before they could cross the threshold of the door, you would see this door smack in the back of their wheelchairs or catching somebody on their heels, and it just looks like it's a matter of not if, but when someone's gonna have some incident with the bathroom doors causing a fall or an injury. So to go on about their actual written policies, the clinic had a safety policy packet and it outlined staff policies to emergency situations. It went to talk about things like communication. It had laid out who has the responsibility at the chain of command. It designates when to call 911, and it describes and points out where the emergency equipment is located. And the policy also mentions that staff is to be required with AED, CPR, and first aid training. Their policy on workplace threats and violence wasn't too extensive. The overarching theme of it was essentially disengage, don't interact, and try and prevent other patients and individuals from interacting with the patient, and to call 911 if things get out of hand. And they also didn't have any security on site, and it seemed to be just lacking any true solution to circumstances that might occur with workplace threats and violence, which is sort of surprising because I was told they get a wide range of traumatic brain injuries, and some of them at times are combative and have mood issues. As I mentioned earlier, the clinic has a Hoyer lift, but they also have an overhead track system too. The staff seemed very proficient with the Hoyer, but most of them were unfamiliar with the track. They didn't sound confident in their use with the overhead track. And there's not any written policies either regarding how to use the Hoyer or the overhead lift. And another thing that seemed really underutilized was they had a really long track for one of the overhead rails. It expanded a large part of the clinic, but they didn't have a single mat table under it. They had a wide variety of mat tables, and not one of them was under the overhead rail. And when I approached some of the staff to bring that to attention, they mentioned that if they need to use the overhead rail with a mat table, they move the tables underneath the rail. But that seems reactive. What if you were in a position where you could have benefited from the rail and you didn't see it ahead of time? It seems like they would benefit from having a mat underneath the rail, which comes into my next point. they mentioned that within the past few years, they've had 2 therapists that got injured and had to stop working with a patient transfer despite having a good available method for helping with patient transfers. To go on to talk about accident investigation and anticipatory analysis, one thing I noticed is there was just a complete lack of it, which is surprising because of the 2 staff injuries they had within the last few years. Both of the staff injuries resulted in loss of working ability and eventually unable to return to work and were fired or laid off. And what makes it even worse is both of them, even though they're at different time frames, had the same type of injury with the same exact patient with the same type of transfer. Both of them ended up trying to do a transfer with the patient up a mat table, resulting in injuring their shoulder. And the shoulder resulted in lengthy rehab for both of them that was not successful and ended up going to a surgical route. And when you have both of these accidents happen and they're so similar in nature, you would think that would call for some sort of accident review and establishing some sort of anticipatory strategy for it. Now, while it's hard to talk about their policy because they don't have a lot of policies, I can talk about some specifics that they probably should have in place. Like, for example, in the clinic, there is some sharps, there are needles. While not commonly used, there's a medication that they have to withdraw from a vial with using a needle, and it involves recapping the needle after use. And there's no policy whatsoever of the appropriate way to handle the medication and the needle. And therapists don't have an extensive background with needles, and so you would think that you would want to have some sort of policy because it is likely therapists will get a little rusty and need a refresher on safe practices for managing the needle. Another policy blind spot to bring to attention is chemicals. They had generic cleaners like Lysol, Pine Sol, and that, but they also had, due to when COVID was occurring and cleaner was hard to find, they bought in bulk a highly condensed cleaner that needs to be diluted. And it has to have a pretty good dilution. So these cleaners must be pretty strong. And on the bottles, there is warnings, but there is no material safety data sheets that are around in the clinic. You would have to refer strictly to the bottle and the links on their website for any safety information, which you are supposed to have in a work setting, MSDS sheets if you have material that could cause harm in a chemical form. To describe STAR's team model, it's primarily a transprofessional model. The majority of the day-to-day treatment is among physical therapists and physical therapist assistants, where the activities they do, the interventions, and the patient care they deliver looks very similar and often is the same practice and same skill set. Unless clearly pointed out, a patient or even another clinician may mistake who's the PTs and the PTAs, because outside of verbal communication and seeing occasional evaluations, there is no visible uniform to help distinguish between the PTs and the PTAs. There is only badges that denote their credentials, and often the therapists keep their badges in their pockets or forget to put them on themselves. And on occasion, there is an interprofessional model that occurs. What you see frequently is they have a speech therapist. The patients will see only the speech therapist at times, and sometimes there will be co-treatment between the speech therapist and the physical therapist. And what you'll also see, which I wasn't able to observe, but it occurs frequently, they say, is prosthetists, orthotists. They even have a PM&R doctor that comes in once in a while, and they coordinate care with therapists and the patients. So just to sum up some of the recommendations that I've been touching on throughout the PowerPoint, the state of the bathrooms, floors, and equipment is glaring from a sterilization perspective. They rely on therapists for cleaning, and it results in poor maintenance of the bathrooms and equipment. Hiring some support staff to help with cleaning would be ideal, because when they're dealing with patients who are working hard, sweating, some of them have catheter bags, some of them can't control some of their bowel and bladder functions all that well. There is likely to be some cross-contamination and some things that really could be addressed better with their cleaning. And then I'd say a second really large change, probably the biggest change, is they need to make their clinic more accessible. It is just hard to see some of the barriers to just moving around the clinic, to getting around the clinic. And I could easily see a fall happening at some point with their bathrooms, given the state of how these heavy doors are so hard to open and also hit patients when they're coming in and out. And then another recommendation is the transparency in marketing. There is a sense of being tricked to come for the things they list on there. They list aquatic, indoor track, sauna, and like 10 or 15 other things that the clinic itself cannot give to their patients unless they have their membership. And the athletic club membership costs over $100 a month and even has a couple $100 startup fee. And to end things, would I send a loved one, a family, or friend here? Overall, I would say yes. But to break into the points, to argue my point for yes, compared to the state of physical therapy clinics, they give better patient care to most places. They give a one-on-one experience. You would get all your needs addressed from a rehabilitation standpoint. You would have a closer and more thorough relationship with your therapist, and they have a lot of different means and variety of equipment to help meet your therapy goals. But this is still considering some of their faults. If I had family or friend that was immunocompromised, I would most definitely not encourage them to come to this clinic due to the fact that they have a hard time keeping it clean. And if I had a family or friend seeking a specific type of therapy, I wouldn't send them here because it's likely that they don't have it and they're just falsifying it online and hiding behind the fact that the athletic club has this but not the clinic.